let's learn how to work with files in Python. So to create a file, it's very straightforward and easy. Simply type F, and this is the actual name of the file. So in fact, let's just say file and then open. And then here you can see that we can pass the file and then mode, buffering, encoding, so on. So here, what we're going to do is the following. So we're going to say /. So in the present directory, we want to create a file called data.csv. And then next, what we need to specify is the actual mode. So the mode is whether we want to write to the file, we want to open a file for reading, or we want to append to a file. So if you want to write to a file, you simply say W. So this will create a file if it doesn't exist. If I open up the project tab, so in here, I'm going to press Command and then 1, and let's run this. You can see that we have date, and it's not date that I wanted, it was data. So let's just delete this file. There we go. If I run it again, you can see that we have a data.csv. So now inside this is empty. So for now, let me ignore the extension, but you can see that we've created a file. So how do we open the file for reading and writing? In here, let's change this to R and then plus. So this is how we open the file for read and write. If you just want to read, you say R. But now I want to open for reading and writing. So I can now use the file. So here file dot and then write. And you can see that we can add, we can write a line, or we can write lines. For now, let's go ahead and write a line, and this will be ID, comma, name, and then email. If I now run the program, you can see that if I open up the data.csv, check this out. We have ID, name, and email. And one thing that we need to do here is to close the file. So anytime that you work with files and you perform any operations on them, you need to close the file. So file and then dot and then close. This is how you work with files. So in here, let me go ahead and have, for example, ID1, name Jamila, and then jamila@gmail.com. Let's have another one. So here, Alex, and then Alex, and then ID will be 2. If I run, go back to data.csv, you can see that we have everything in one line, but really what I want is a new line after each one. So here, I'm going to add a / and then N for new line, grab that and put it here, and the same here. If I run it, go back to data.csv, and you can see that we have our CSV file in here, which is really cool. And you saw that every time that we run this, we pretty much just override the file with the new contents. So if you want to append to the file, you say A, just like that, and now this will append. So if I add, for example, if I duplicate that, I just want to comment this and then say 3, and then here Samir, and then Samir@gmail.com, run it, and check this out. We have appended to the file. But if I remove the A and then say write and then plus, and if I uncomment everything and then run, we've just override the file with new contents. So let me actually just put a note here so you know exactly. So in here we have W for writing, and then A for appending, and then R for reading, and then R plus for reading and then writing. And depending on the flag that you pass in here is the mode that you will operate on the file. Next, let me show you how to read from our file. Now that we've written some contents to the file, let's read it. So to read, let's use the R flag. So we just want to read the file, and let me just delete all of that. And in fact, let me show you that if we try to write, you can see that we have an error, right? So the flag is actually there to do its job. So we can only read now. So if I remove all of this, and then I can say print and file dot and then read. So this will actually read the entire file. So there you go. So this is the entire file. If you want, so if I comment this, so if you want to, so file dot and then read, so you can read a line. So here you can see that we've read the entire file, but you can also read line by line. And to do it is really straightforward. So if I comment that out, you can say for and then line in and then simply say file, and here print line. If I run it, you can see that we read line by line. And what reading a line by line gives you the ability to is to take the line and then, you know, if you want to turn the line into an object or do anything with it, you can do it. And if I show you, so let me just comment that out. We can say file dot and then lines. So here read lines, right? And then run this. This actually gives us nothing, but if we print and run it, this gives us a list with each line. So you can see that this is line 1, line 2, and line 3, and finally line 4. So there you have it. This is how you read from a file. Next, let me show you a syntax, which is the preferred way when it comes to writing and reading from files. So another way that we can work with files is to use the with syntax. So what the with syntax gives us, it gives us the flexibility of removing this file.close, so we don't have to remember to close the file when we open it. And the syntax is as follows. So let's remove this from here. And the way we work with the with keyword and file is by saying with and then open the actual file. So in here we have data.csv, and the mode for now, let's just say R, because we just want to read, and then as file. So this is the actual name. And now we can perform everything that we want. So here we can just read the file as we did before. For now, let's just say print and then file dot and then read. We just want to read the entire file. Run it, and you can see that we get the exact same output. And the benefit here is that we don't have to say file dot and then close. This is automatically done for us. Now, one thing that I want to show you is if, for example, we say data, so we know that this file doesn't exist. So if I run this, you can see that we have an error, right? So data.csv, no such file or directory. So what we're going to do instead is the following. So we're going to check first if the file exists. And to do that, we need, so if I remove this, we need to import OS path. So I'm going to say import and then OS dot and then path. So with this, we can check whether the file exists or not. So let's say that here we have file and then name equals to, and in fact, let's just have file name equals to dot and then data CSV. And what we're going to do is say OS path dot and then file, or actually is file, and then pass file name, and this returns a boolean. So if the file exists, what we're going to do is open here. So let's indent this and let's pass the file name in here, file name, and there we go. Else, so else we're going to print that file and then file name does not exist. And now if we say, for example, gibberish here, we know that this file doesn't exist. Let's run it. You can see that we have file and then the file name does not exist. However, if we change this to data.csv and we know that this exists, let's run it. And actually, I've said data.csv.csv, so my bad there. Run it, and you can see that we have the contents of the file. So this is a better way of you working with files, because you want to check whether the file exists or not. So I think we can even remove the ./ there. So let's just try this, and yes, everything works the same. So there you have it. This is how you read, write, and you've seen the actual flags if you want to append to a file, and using the OS path to check whether the file exists before opening the file. If you have any questions on this section, drop me a message. Otherwise, let's move on. In this section, let's learn how to use Python to fetch data from the internet. So right here, I'm in google.com, and I want to show you how to use Python to retrieve this page right here. So let me go back to PyCharm, and in here we're going to say from, and then URL lib import, and then if I press Control and then space, you can see that we have a couple of options, and the one that I want is request. Now what we can do is say request dot URL open, and we're going to pass the actual URL. So HTTP and then colon / www.google.com, and there we go. So now we can extract this to a variable. I'm going to press Option Command V, and now we have the URL open here. So what I'm going to do is actually name this to R for request. Now I can perform a print. So let me print the actual request. And if I run this, you can see that we have an object. So here, this is a response, right? So we got a response back. So with this response, we can say dot and then get and then code and invoke the method there, run it, and you can see that we get 200 status code, which means that the request was fine and we can read the actual data. So to read the data, I'm going to print, and then in here I'm going to say dot and then read and then invoke the function. And if I execute the program, check this out. You can see that we actually have the website. So we've opened up google.com with Python. You can see that this is a long string which contains some HTML and JavaScript. So there you have it. This is how you can read from the internet using Python. And you can see that this was, in about 4 lines of code, we can read from the internet, which is really awesome. Next, let me show you how to make an API call and work with JSON objects. All right, open up Google and type jokes. So jokes and then API. So in here, go to this very first link. So github.com official joke API. And what we want in here is to get a random joke. So here you can see that we can get 10 random jokes or just one random joke. So I'm going to grab this link right here and open up a new tab and then paste that in. And you can see that we have some data back. So this is a JSON object. If I go back to that URL and grab this one, or actually it's the same, but random 10. So here at the end, simply say random 10. And you can see that now we get an array of objects containing jokes. So let's grab this URL and use Python to fetch these jokes right here. So let me just go back to this one joke first. So I want you to see. So here you can see that we have the ID, type, setup, and then the punchline here. So let's open up PyCharm, and in here, let's just modify this a little bit. So let's have the URL in here equals 2, and then that's the URL for 10 jokes. And then here, let's pass the URL, just like that. Now, if we run the program, you can see that we get an error. And the reason why we are getting an error is because of SSL certificate. So what we need to do is just remove the S. So here, instead of HTTPS, simply say HTTP and run. And there you have it. So you can see that we have the actual jokes. So here we have 10 jokes. So, oops. So here you can see that this is an array, and then we have 10 objects inside. So let's take this data and then use Python to load the actual JSON. So I'm going to collapse this, and what we need is to import and then JSON, and then JSON. There we go. And now we can say JSON dot loads. Oops, loads, just like that. And we're going to grab the read. So here, I'm going to put this into a variable. So JSON, or actually content, or let me simply say data. So data, and then paste that in. And now we want to load the actual data, just like that. So if I now extract this to a variable, I've got the JSON data, and let's print JSON data. So JSON data. So I want you to see things step by step. If I run this, you can see that this is our JSON. Have a look. So what we're going to do is the following. So we're going to loop through, right? So we're going to loop through this JSON data and then pull out the setup and the punchline. So let's do the following. So what we're going to do is, so remember how to loop through lists. So let's say for, and then J for JSON in JSON data. And now we have access to the actual JSON. So this is the individual JSON. So here we can get the following. So we can get the general. So let's have a variable called general equals to J, and we're going to grab the setup. Oh, actually, so here setup. So it's not general, so it's setup. My bad. So setup there, and we're going to grab the setup. And here, let's grab the punchline. So here you can see punchline. So let's just grab the punchline equals to J, and then punchline, just like that. And for now, let's just print to the console. But if you wanted to turn this into an object, you could definitely do it, right? So you could have a class, and in fact, let's just do it. So let's just do this. So what we're going to do here is the following. So we're going to create a class. So let's create a class in here. So class, this will be joke, just like this. And remember, we want to have the init. So override methods, init. And in here, what we're going to do is say that we want to pass the setup and then punchline, just like that, self dot, and then punch, or actually setup equals to, and then setup, and we want self dot and then punchline, oops, just like that, equals to, and then punchline, right? And this is our class. So now what we can do is say joke equals to, and then joke, and what we're going to do is pass the setup and punchline. And in here, let's have a list. So let's say jokes equals to an empty list for now, and we're going to append. So let's append, or actually just say jokes dot and then append and then joke. And you can see that we are building a little program here. So now we've finished, and in here this should be within quotes, just like that. And now let me just say print. So we're going to print. So let's for now print jokes and then dot len. So jokes dot and then len, just like that. If I run the program, you can see that we have 10 in here. But now check this out. If we loop, so let's actually loop through our jokes that we go back. So in fact, what I'm going to do is override the str, so string. So we're going to override the string. So here, press Command O and then str. There we have it. And we're going to return. So here, this will be the setup and then self dot setup and then punchline and then self dot punchline. There we have it. Now I can go back and we can loop. So let's loop. So for and then joke in and then jokes. We're going to print and then joke. So let's just have f got, and this will be within curly brackets, and then close it here and then say jokes. Now let's run it and check this out. So you can see that we have a bunch of jokes. So this was the status code 200, this was the JSON, we got 10 jokes, and you can see all the jokes. So setup, do you want to hear my pizza joke? Punchline, never mind, it's too cheesy. I don't know if this is funny to you, but yeah, so these are like very dry jokes, which they actually become funny. So yeah, this is pretty much how you go about using the request, so from URL lib, as well as the JSON to read JSON objects. So now you know how to perform HTTP requests. All right, let me teach you about the package manager for Python. So pip is the package manager for installing Python packages. Remember I said that with Python, we can import existing code that other people have written. And pip allows us to download those packages and make it available to us. So in here, you can see, so I'm going to leave the link in the description of this video so you can follow along. And you can see that installation guide should be very straightforward. And basically, when we installed Python, remember that I said you should add Python to the path, right? So when you do that, everything comes bundled up. And if you have any issues, you can refer to this page, how to install pip. So once we have that out of the way, we can go back to PyCharm. And in here, so this is the example where we downloaded jokes, and you'll see where we're heading to with this little application. But in here, go ahead and open up the terminal. So in here, you can see the terminal and type pip and then 3. So this is to make sure that we have pip installed. So pip 3 is what comes with Python 3.8. So the latest version that we have installed, right? So in here, you can see that we have a bunch of commands. So the command that we want is install. So install to install packages. And then you can uninstall packages, and you can also list packages. So you can see that, you know, the commands, you can even show information about package, you can verify, so on and so forth. And in here, you saw that we imported request from URL lib. Now, the most popular package for performing HTTP requests is this one right here called requests. So let's install requests and then use it instead of the request that comes with Python. So open up the terminal, and in here I'm going to clear the screen. So I just press Ctrl L, or you can simply type clear, right? So if you want to learn more about how to use the terminal, go ahead and check my course where I teach the terminal and Vim fundamentals. So this is really important for you to be able to use your terminal. So it's an essential skill that you should have, right? As a beginner, you should know how to work with the terminal. So here, let's type pip and then 3 install and then requests. So requests. So in here, you can see that this is what we're doing, right? So we are installing requests. So this is the name of the module. If I press enter, you can see that we have a bunch of things and everything was successfully installed. Now that we have requests installed, what we're going to do is use requests. So let me collapse this, and we can say here import and then requests. So you can see that we have requests here. And with requests, the way that we perform the request is as follows. So let me actually show you the docs. So you can see here, you say requests and then dot get. So we want to get from a URL. So let's do that. So in here, what we're going to do is right here, we're going to say requests dot and then get and then pass the URL. And what we get back is a response. So now that we have the response, let me show you. So in here, we have the response content, and you can see it's simply .text. So what we're going to do is we're going to replace the data with response dot and then text right here. And I can remove the request with this package right here. So let's delete this import. And then you see that we no longer have to do this. So let's just get rid of that. And let me put it a bit smaller. And you can see that we have an error here. So the way that we do get the actual code is by saying response dot and then status code. There you go. And to be honest, this is everything, right? Everything should work as before. And let me just add some spaces here. And in fact, we can even collapse this. So let's take response here. We're going to cut this and this will go here. We don't need this data anymore. And let me add some spaces here. Now, if I run the program, everything should work as before. So here, if I run the program, you can see that we still have our jokes, right? So remember, status code 200, got 10 jokes. This is the setup. And then we have the punchline here, right? So there you have it. We've learned how to use pip. We installed a module and we are using it, right? So with Python, there are tons of these modules that you can reuse.